Right, okay, folks, welcome to a rather special Nice and Nasty. Now, you can see why it's special because he's in the video. There's this industry of ours or hobby of ours. And it's like anything. They throw the name about. They throw these tags like legend and all this kind of nonsense. And a lot of the time, it doesn't apply. You think Commodore 64, you think of Jeff Minter, you think of Sean Southern, you think of the Spectrum, you think of Matthew Smith, and then you think of this guy, Raffaele Cecco. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Cecco.
Raffaele Cecco. I'll be honest with you. We did actually speak earlier on. I'm going to call you Raf.
Yeah.
Or the Rafmeister. How's that?
That's great.
Rafmeister. Big R. There we go. I'll call you Raf if that's all right. What was I going to say? I was a Commodore 64 guy back in the day. I'm too old. I didn't. My mum and dad didn't buy me one. I had to buy it myself. I got the C64. I never really knew anyone on my Spectrum, and then later on I got a pals with guy from my Spectrum. But so it's one of these interesting things. You grow up and you're in your own wee bubble, and when somebody tells you, "Oh, the Spectrum's better," no, my version's better, and you've kind of almost got blinkered vision. And when it comes to like magazines, back in the day, it was obviously Zap magazine or it was Crash. So I wasn't really fully aware of yourself, Raf, at the time. I was aware of your titles. But fortunately, in the last probably 20, 30 years, I started to, when I discovered that people actually sold ZX Spectrums on eBay, I'm like, I'm going to buy one of them. And I got it for like 15 quid, whatever. And in the intervening 30 odd years, I've grown to realise what a fantastic computer the Spectrum is. I remember seeing it at the time thinking, that looks rubbish compared to my C64, but it's a phenomenal machine, and I won't hear a bad word said about it. So just to kind of kick things off, Rafi, I'll be honest, I thought that, are your parents Spanish?
No, my father is Italian from Naples, south of Italy. My mum was born in France, but she's got Greek Cypriot, or had Greek Cypriot parents, my grandparents, but they met in London back in the late 50s or something. So I'm a Londoner. I was born in the UK, in London, hence the accent. But yeah, my dad's Italian, hence the name.
Glad to see that they kept the name, obviously. Eh? I mean, you've got a most unsounding Cockney name ever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So just to kind of kick things off, Raf, what was your kind of first experiences with computer games? I'm assuming coming from London, there's probably a lot of arcades kicking about back then.
Yeah, I mean, my parents actually got hold of a video games console called a Video Master Super Score, which was like a Pong clone, basically. And they didn't really actually buy it. You remember we used to rent TV sets back then. And, it came bundled with the TV. It might have been our first color TV or something. And this kind of horizontal box thing came with a couple of paddles on it. And it was Pong and variations of Pong. And I thought it was absolutely amazing how this thing could actually respond to your inputs and move graphics and things. And that's how I kind of got the bug for video games. And beyond that, it was, getting a ZX 81 and we had Commodore Pets at school. And a friend of mine, talking about arcades in London, a friend of mine, his dad owned an arcade on the Seven Sisters Road in Tottenham, North London. And I'd go in there sometimes in the evenings, free playing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Defender and Phoenix and all those old arcade games. So
the machine, Phoenix.
Phoenix in the middle there, yeah.
And then bonus point, what are the other two?
Oh, blimey. Is that Defender that I can see there?
No, that's Missile Command.
Oh, Missile Command. Yeah.
Okay. And a bit of Rolling Thunder at the far side there. Yeah, so what a great friend. I bet he had loads of friends, that guy.
Yeah, he did that. He was very popular, very good at Space Invaders as well, my mate. Yeah.
So, I mean, I was obviously doing a bit of Googling just to kind of see your back catalogue. I think you're born in 1967 as well, which is apparently, I did do a check. Apparently, 1967 was the year that all the best people were born. So there you go.
Absolutely. We're Gen X, isn't it? I think we are. Yeah.
I think that was it, the main year. So when did you first get a computer, or was that?
ZX. Well, yeah. I mean, I have games consoles. So I had this Video Master Super Score, Atari 2600, was it, with the kind of wooden?
Or we called it the Atari VCS.
In the UK. Yeah, and I had all that combat. Space Invaders with 112 variations and all that stuff. Yeah.
Sounds ridiculous when you think about 112 games. I mean, it was just stupid things like they would make the Space Invaders invisible.
Yeah, or you wouldn't have the shields or something like that. Yeah. But I loved that game, actually. Absolutely loved it.
I was unfortunate enough. I think it was it 90? No, I'm sure it was 199.99, or was it 99.99? I think it might have been 99.99. But back in the 70s, my mum and dad categorically says, "You're not getting one. We can't afford it," and that was it. But and you used to get all these adverts on TV and all that kind of stuff, and you'd go up to these big superstores and you'd see all Space Invaders getting played. But my first experience of that was a mate got one for his Christmas, and he brought it down to my house, and he said, "Look, I'll come back tomorrow, but what I'll do is, to save me lugging it back, I'll just leave it. I'll just let you keep it overnight." And I think I sat up all night and played it, and it was Pac-Man and Combat. These were the two.
Yeah, I love that. The VCS was fantastic. You look back at the games now, it's quite laughable, really, but back then it was amazing.
As you say, Raf, I mean, I was trying to. I can't remember who I was trying to talk to. I've been doing YouTube for about 13 years. I actually play very, very little games these days. It's probably like yourself, just lack of time and all that kind of stuff. But I still get excited when I see things like the fact that I've got arcade machines in my kitchen. The fact that I can play any of the 10,000 games on my computer using MAME. And the very, very first time I saw, apart from seeing a Pong machine at Edinburgh Airport, and I looked at it, I went, I didn't really pay much attention to it. I remember hearing Space Invaders getting played, and then when I kind of pushed through the crowd, I went, "What's this guy? Wait a minute, this guy's actually interacting with the TV. He was pressing a button, and this thing was moving left and right, and it was phenomenal." It's hard you had to be there to appreciate how much of a kind of wow moment it was.
Yeah, I mean, Space Invaders was I remember playing that. That was and really addictive as well. Do you remember how addictive that game was? Space Invaders. Interesting fact about that game. I was reading about it. You know how the invaders move, that kind of shimmering effect that they have.
Yeah, they kind of go to a line.
The reason it does that is because it was only powerful enough to move one Space Invader at a time on each frame. And because of that, as you started shooting them, it naturally sped up. So they didn't have to actually program the speeding up in. It was just as you eliminated them, because the remaining ones got updated more often. It would just.
It is definitely less. I never realised that. Yeah, it is definitely less. The more you shoot, the less, because when you first start, it goes, and you kind of go like that.
Yeah.
And then the more you shoot, the less there are, until there's maybe 6. You don't really notice it. So that it was purely down to the lack of kind of processor power. It was actually
interesting. They made a kind of gameplay feature.
Yeah. So was it a Spectrum you said you got?
Yeah, I had a ZX81 first, where I kind of learned the rudiments of programming. I could never get anything to load or save on that machine, so I didn't do any serious work on it. But I did a few very basic things on it. Because when I got the Spectrum, that's when I really got into all the machine code and all that kind of serious kind of coding stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so. When did you get the Spectrum? Was it a Christmas present, or did you buy
Yeah,
yourself?
it was either Christmas. I think Christmas actually. Yeah, and it was only was it a year or two after the ZX81? I think it was. So, and it was an order of magnitude better
Yeah.
machine than the ZX81. You had all the colours and
Yeah.
48K instead of 1K and all that sort of thing. And it was I really got addicted.
Yeah, it's interesting. My first kind of awareness of home computers was, I think there was the whole computer education thing that was on BBC, and you had I can't remember what they were called, but you had the computer program and all this kind of stuff. So I was absolutely engrossed with computers. I never had one, but what was I going to say there? Yeah, my mum and dad bought me do you remember, it was called the Home Computer Course, and it was one of these magazines that came out every month, and the issue 1, in the middle, it had about, I don't know, 20 computers, and it was given like the pros and cons, and like other information, the price, and like the Atari 800 was like £500.
Yeah.
The pros was like it had hundreds of games. The cons was it's expensive. Spectrum, I think, was described as don't shoot me, I'm just the messenger. I think the Spectrum was described as pros was it was cheap, cons was it was like poor color, poor sound, like a poor computer, but it was cheap. The Commodore 64, it was classed as a business machine. So I wanted a Spectrum or a Commodore 64, but I was never going to get that. My mum and dad bought me a Texas TI 99, which I was one game for. But anyway, I then bought my own C64. But anyway, enough about me. People know my history. It's about you. So you got your Spectrum. What I always think is interesting is there's two types of people of our age that got into computers. There was people like me who were far too stupid to program. I never got beyond the think of a number between 1 and 100, higher, lower, and then you guess it. That was it. I never went beyond that. Then there's people like yourself who actually probably enjoyed. Did you enjoy writing games more than actually playing them?
I did enjoy playing games, certainly to begin with. I wasn't very good at them, to be honest, but I did enjoy playing them. I got quite addicted to playing certain games like Phoenix, Galaxian, and Defender. But I was always fascinated with how they actually worked as well, which is why I got into the kind of programming side. And it was hard work. You had to keep at it. That was the thing. You had to be determined. You'd hit a wall and so I can't get this thing working. I don't understand this, but you kind of keep going. You're kind of addicted to learning how to program properly and being able to move things around on the screen and so on. So I was quite determined to make a career out of it.
So pretty early on, you thought, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, from when I was about 14 onwards was when I was starting to get really serious about it, and I knew I was good at it because I was showing the teachers at school how to do things. and you remember we did O levels, and they weren't.
Yeah. Before that,
O level computer science, as it was called then, as an option at my school. And I said, so listen, if I just study for it myself, can I just do the exam? You don't have to do anything for me. So I just did the O level off my own back. They let me do it. Yeah.
Wow. So you always had a bit of a skill for it then. Fantastic. So what was the computers at school? We had a BBC. No, sorry. The first computer we got, bizarrely, I think it was the geography teacher. It must have been his own computer. It was an Apple II. And then when this computer educational thing came in, we got like 3 BBC computers.
Yeah, we had the Commodore PET with a 9-inch green screen.
Yeah.
And you could learn programming and stuff on that, but I do remember it had a really good version of Space Invaders on that machine actually.
Pet Invaders.
I can't remember what it was. It might have been called Pet Invaders, quite likely. And I remember our maths teacher, because it was all part of the kind of maths department, wasn't it? And she let us play Space Invaders for 10 minutes at the beginning of the class and stuff, So that was nice.
So at what point, well, you said pretty much when you got your first computer, you thought, this is what I want to do for a living. Did you start like writing games in BASIC, and then did you kind of go up to machine code? And
yeah, I'd write some like crappy little games in BASIC, and I remember I did like a Hangman program in BASIC, which I tried to sell to companies. I got rejected by all of them, understandably. So that brought me back down to earth with a bump. But I thought, okay, I need to get serious, need to learn machine code. And I put together like a graphics demo. I'd drawn all these sprites, which were quite pretty, and I had all these sprites moving around nice and smoothly, nice and colourful. And I just sent that off to Microgen, who did all the, Pajama Rama and
yeah.
And they just offered me a job off of the back of that. And I would have been 17 at the time.
What was the game, Raf? You said it was. What was
it? It wasn't a game. It was just a demo, really. Just some sprites flying around. I thought, well, he can get some sprites flying around, so he'll be able to do a game. So that's how I got the job.
Fantastic. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually share my screen. I've just done a couple of these screenshots. Let's have a quick look. Present. Share screen. Entire screen. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. So yeah, so that was according to Wikipedia. I mean, know how accurate that is. Was this your first kind of commercial game then, Exelon?
No, there was one.
No. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Now, there we go.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
Equinox.
Equinox, yeah. Which looks very similar to Exelon and Cybernoid, actually, if you look at it. But yeah, that was my first game.
Now, I'll be honest. What I did was I was playing all your games earlier on, just so to kind of familiarise myself with them. And what is staggering is you kind of hit the ground running, because I mean, if you even like guys like Jeff Minter, when you look at a lot of their games, they were absolute dog shit. I mean, they were really, really poor, but they got better and better and better and better. But you just like went boof, and you hit it. It's such a, I mean, the thing about the Spectrum was, and I'm not technical in the slightest, was a lot of the games like this, like, you couldn't do colour, and they were all monochrome and all that. I mean, that's staggering looking. And did you do the graphics and that for?
Yeah, I drew the graphics for that.
Wow.
And Microgen, it was a bit of a hotbed of creativity, really, because we had some very good coders there. There was kind of the original programmer and games designer at Microgen, a guy called Chris Hinsley. He was a bit older than us, he was a bit of a, not say quite father figure, but he was me over more mature. He was like, 23, 24, something like that. I was 17. David Perry, who did Aladdin and various other games as well, he was about the same.
Dave Perry, who went on to like Shiny.
Yeah, him. He was there. Yeah. Nick Jones as well, who did a lot of my C64 conversions. So they were really good guys, especially Chris. He taught us, all of us, quite a bit, actually, especially in terms of game design as well. So it was quite easy to do a good game there, to be honest, because of the people that were there.
Yeah. I suppose, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, nowadays, I don't know if I know you're still involved in the scene. You're one of these guys that embraces the fact that people like myself and still love talking about these games.
Yeah, you say that, but to be honest, until about, I don't know, a month ago, I mean, I'd been out of the industry since I still am out of the games industry, really, because I work in tech, but I left the games industry in about 2003, something like that. And it's only like the last month or so where I've started paying attention to it again, to the retro scene, just through, my partner and my daughter was saying, "Oh, you ought to pay a bit more attention to this. People like all your old games and so on." So, yeah, it's kind of all this retro stuff is quite new to me, actually.
No, it's interesting. So, nowadays, I mean, some of the games that you've seen for like the Commodore 64 and Spectrum are absolutely jaw-dropping. It's like that just would not have been possible 40 years ago. But I think it's because they've obviously there's so much information on the internet, and how do I do smooth scrolling and this and that kind of stuff. So I'd imagine it must be a lot easier. So I mean, back then, did you guys kind of feed off each other? You'd say, how did you manage to get that to move so smoothly? Oh, I did this, and
yeah, there was definitely that. And it was the first time I met someone else who knew how to program in machine code at Microgen. That was fantastic for me, because I'd been on my own, just learning from all these scant pieces of information and books and things like that. So it was quite, obviously pre-internet. There wasn't freely available information. But then when you got into the thick of it with other people who were doing the same thing, obviously you kind of feed off each other. And you see it in the games. You look at the early Spectrum games to what was produced over the next 5 years, and they just got better and better and better, didn't they? So it's learning more about the machine.
Yeah. So how did you end up at Microgen? What happened? Did you send off a demo?
I sent off a kind of sprite demo to them, and they offered me a job. I went for an interview, and they offered me a job, £4,250 a year. I still remember.
I can remember my very, very, very first salary as well. It wasn't quite as much as that, but yeah, 1985. It's funny how it's just stuck in my head.
Yeah. It was, So, they gave me the job. I hadn't really looked. I think I went to see one other company. I think it was called, the Lally Software? And they'd done a game called Gin Genie.
I remember the name. What was the company called?
And it was at the time it was unusual because the programmer was actually a woman, which back then wasn't so common. She was a mathematician. I think her name was Hanan Samara. She was like a brilliant mathematician and coder. Yeah. And I went for an interview there as well, but in the end I accepted the job with Microgen instead because they were just a bit more established and they had more games. So I went with them instead.
How did you, obviously this is pre-internet, how did you, why Microgen, why not Ocean or whatever?
I don't know. They must have advertised. Can you remember they used to put adverts in
the
they must have just advertised. Who knows? I'm pretty sure I would have sent the demo off to more than one company, and they would have replied, I guess, and I just went with them. Yeah.
Not a bad company to start with. They did some fantastic games. So was that, am I right in thinking, well, again, according to Wikipedia, was that the only game that you did for Microgen?
No, I did that. I did Equinox, and when I left Microgen, which was about not long after I started, to be honest, a year and a half later, something like that. I did a game for them called Cop Out as a kind of parting gift because they weren't very happy with me leaving. So I kind of did that a bit reluctantly, Cop Out, when I was, I think I'd already started on Exelon at that time for Houston.
So was Cop Out, was that a commercial game at all, or did it? No?
It was, yeah. If you look it up, you'll see it was a kind of gallery shooting game. You can see it's got my hallmarks, the kind of colourful graphics. It was just
So obviously you went to Houston. Houston were definitely one of the big players back then. You had Andrew Houston and what's his name, Steve Turner.
Andrew Braybrook.
Andrew Braybrook as well.
Houston had some brilliant games, actually. He had a really good stable of great developers and great games. So I was really surprised when they went down, whenever it was. They turned into 21st century and just started doing pinball games after that.
And
that stable of games, I didn't quite know what had happened there, to be honest.
Yeah, looking at, obviously, I'm going to share the screen again. Looking at the games you obviously did, present your screen. Here we go. Yeah, obviously that was Equinox. I was trying to figure out, do you know how to make Microsoft Word full screen? I couldn't figure out. I hate Microsoft Word. Anyway, so that was Equinox. Got to that in 1986. And then you had Exelon.
Yeah.
That gun turret does look quite similar, but it's different enough though. I go to a computer club, believe it or not. There was a guy, not my mates, there was a guy that put an advert about 15 years ago saying he's going to start a computer club, like a retro computer club. And I turned up, and so once a month we go through to a church in Edinburgh and we take along Spectrums and whatever it is, and it's great. Well, we tend to spend most of the time just talking, but it's nice to kind of play games. And I was playing that game, Exelon, and it's fantastic. It kind of reminds me a bit like Super Metroid on the SNES. The graphics, honestly, you know, when you look at a lot of Spectrum games, you're like, you can easily tell that's a Spectrum. That is phenomenal. I mean, I take it you must have just have been extremely skilled as to how there's really no color clash, even when the guy walks behind the buttons on it.
Yeah, but that was the trick, though. You make it walk behind things rather than splodging his color in front of things. So those pillars, those green pillars, if you look, they're nice character-sized pieces. So he can just walk behind it, and you won't get any color clash. I didn't like color clash on the Spectrum, and you could avoid it reasonably well as long as you were kind of careful with the graphics. You could avoid it.
Yeah. So was it kind of almost laziness then, you think?
No, not really. I mean, because people, you wanted a character to walk in front of a house. You couldn't walk behind the house like in Pajama Armor because you wouldn't see the character. So that was it. You had to have color clash. But I did think like not having a house and just having like pillars so you can walk behind the pillars. If you look in Cop Out, it's the same idea. He's walking behind pillars and other more slender structures, so you can see that he's gone behind something.
Yeah.
Color clash.
But I mean, seriously impressive. And what I was amazed to find when I played that, I thought that's obviously one of your later games, and that was actually like your second game. It's like, my goodness. Obviously, you went on to like Cybernoid. So that was Cybernoid 1, Cybernoid 2. So did they have exactly the same, like that, but that there, the score and all that kind of stuff? Did you just reuse that part?
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah, I mean, it was my idea to do Cybernoid 2, to be honest, but it was a pretty good franchise. The first one was quite a big hit, so they okay, let's do number 2. I didn't do the graphics for number 2 because it's a bit different style. I did the graphics for Cybernoid, the first Cybernoid, but not the Cybernoid 2. That wasn't me. It was a guy called Hugh Binns who went on to find. He started a company called Eurocom that did loads of like arcade conversions and things on the consoles.
I think I'm familiar with that name. I think he did. Did he not do like a lot of like artwork, even like on the, what was it called? It wasn't it was like the early internet. It was called CompuNet. It was on the Commodore 64, and you had a modem and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sure
he might well have done, because he was 64 graphics as well.
He was like the kind of Rob Hubbard was to music, he was to kind of graphics.
I didn't realize he was that big in C64 graphics, actually. But
yeah, I did check, and I noticed he did the graphics for like a lot of the Commodore 64 conversions. But yeah, your graphics on the aren't they too shabby? I mean, if you think that Hugh Binns is a professional and you're doing the coding and the sound and everything, I mean, you've done not a bad job.
Yeah, I didn't do the sound actually. They'd always get someone else to do the sound. For these games, I was certainly not a musician, but yeah, the graphics, I had a certain style and technique of drawing the graphics. To be honest, I know it sounds weird saying it, but I'm not actually a natural artist at all. It's just that on a Spectrum with the limited colors, limited resolution, you can get away with it, whereas as soon as we went on to 16 bits, you needed proper artistic flair, which I don't have. I could do these kind of geometric things but beyond that. And also the main character in Exelon, the animation, I couldn't animate humans like that. Someone I knew who did that for me.
So was it kind of like graph paper and that you used when you were designing graphics?
No, actually no, because we at Microgen, someone had written a graphics editor. It ran in Spectrum, but it was really good for drawing sprites, and that's what I use for most of my games on the Spectrum, like a bit of an art package, that sort of
thing. Lovely. So that was obviously Cybernoid 2. Then I was actually going to put a wee red X here just for our younger viewers.
Very tasteful.
So that was Stormlord, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that was my first scrolling game. It had really nice, smooth scrolling. That game, only horizontal scrolling.
Yeah. Again, I mean the graphics were like the standout part of it. I mean, obviously it was a great game, but the graphics for these games were phenomenal. Was that Hugh Binns that did these ones as well?
No, I believe it or not, I did all these graphics.
You did that? These seriously?
Yeah, wow. Including the fairy. But funny thing though, what I was saying about not being a real artist, I couldn't get the legs right at all, so I just stuck her in a pot. So you didn't have to draw the legs.
So it's quite literally you couldn't draw legs, so I'll just put her in a gardening pot.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I mean, was there any? Obviously, at the time, people were like, "Bloody!" And you know, being a teenager of a certain age, he saw graphics like that, and you're like, "Oh my goodness!"
Yeah.
I mean, was that just like a wee sort of two fingers up to like the sort of the establishment?
No, it was kind of going through Hewson, so they would okay things, and they clearly thought that was okay, so it's fine. You know, it's not that bad, really. I mean, it's kind of tasteful, I guess. I'm not sure she'd be able to fly, to be honest, but.
Fantastic. So that was Stormlord. Then you had Stormlord 2, obviously. And then you moved across to. So wait, you moved to Vivid Image. So that, according to
no, I was a couple of games before that actually. So I did License to Kill, which was a James Bond.
Right.
Coin op. Yeah, I had a couple of friends that worked at Domark, if you remember.
Yeah. Kind of multi-level.
They'd formed their own little development house, but they still working with Domark, and Domark had the James Bond license for License to Kill, so they asked me to do that because I knew a couple of the guys that worked at this kind of spin-off development house. So I did that. I also did Solomon's Key, which was a coin op.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, really nice little game. I really liked the coin op. Actually, it was a bit of a puzzle arcade game.
Yeah, I like Solomon's Key. They're strangely omitted from your Wikipedia page.
Oh yeah, don't bother looking at the Wikipedia page. I remember I went on it to correct it, and then someone just deleted my corrections. I thought, okay, well, you know best. Obviously, it's only me. But anyway, yeah, there's all things missing there.
So before we kind of move on to the kind of 16-bit machines, obviously crack. Again, we're talking pre-internet. I'm lucky enough to kind of know Gary Lydon fairly well of Crash, and I've met Gary Penn a few times. I've had them on my channel. Both absolutely cracking guys. Never managed to get Julian Rignall because I think he lives in America, whatever. But yeah, what was apparent was, I mean, for consumers like myself, you went to a shop, you got it wasn't pocket money. I got my wages. I used to collect shopping trolleys when I was part-time for school, and I got my £12 every week, and I would go to the computer shop. And before computer magazines came out, you literally just looked at the screenshots in the back and thought, I'll buy that one. And sometimes it was absolute crap, or even sometimes you just looked at the artwork and the cover, which had no relevance to the game. But when Zap came along, which I think Crash came out a couple of months beforehand, and they realised how popular it was, because I think, if I'm right in thinking, I think Crash, they literally just got, you wouldn't be allowed to do it nowadays, you literally just went in off the street and got a hold of the kids. Oh, do you want to come in and we'll give you some free computer games and tell us what you think? So, you know, you got the people that were playing the games, that were buying the games, and they would review them. Obviously, Zap did things slightly different, but they took gamers and got them to review it. And these guys would absolutely rip games to shreds. If they thought they were crap, they would say. I mean, what did you have quite a good kind of relationship with like Crash and all these guys?
Yeah, indirectly, because you know I had the diary thing in Crash.
Yeah.
That went on for quite a few months. I think that was
what was it? Sorry, Raph, what was the game? What was the game that you had the diary?
It was Cybernoid 2, I think.
Was it?
Yeah, so Hewson had organised to do this monthly diary while I was developing the game. I thought, oh crap, you know, I have to write magazine articles as well as program the games. You know, I had enough on my plate, but I could see it was worth doing because, you know, it's Crash, free publicity every single month. So that's how that gig kind of came up, really. It was great. It was really good for the game, actually.
Because, of course, Andrew Braybrook, he did the diary for Paradroid.
Yeah, I think that's why it came about, because they obviously done it for that game.
Yeah. Did you not feel a bit of pressure when you were like, you had to make this game pretty good?
Well, I mean, it was so close to Cybernoid anyway. At the very least, it was going to be as good as Cybernoid. So I thought, well, you know, we should be okay. And I suppose in some ways Crash might have felt a bit obligated that for them to slate it after they've been going on about it for like 6 months or whatever. It might have been a step too far, maybe. So maybe they were a bit more generous on the reviews. I couldn't say for sure, but it was an okay game.
Yeah. So how did like the design? I mean, am I right in thinking that with you played a lot of, well, you did play a lot of arcade games. When you started programming, you didn't want to write adventure games or whatever it is. You wanted to write arcade games, because all your games, I would say that all your games could quite easily have been put into a coin op.
Yeah, I mean that's where my main influence was, to be honest, was those coin op machines, especially games like Defender, Phoenix, and all those games that are in the arcades. I wasn't really one for big sprawling adventures, although I did like Zelda on the Super Nintendo. I did enjoy playing that. But generally it's kind of arcade games that have got a bit, if they have a bit of a puzzle element to them as well, like Solomon's Key has, that was a bit of a puzzler as well, but it was fundamentally an arcade game, I suppose. Not just, with the odd exception, not just pure shooting, I suppose, unless it was early games. I like games with a bit of depth, or did like games with a bit of depth to them, but more on the arcade side, I think.
Yeah. So how did you come up with ideas for games? Did you sort of like have a brainstorm session with people and say, what about making a game like this? Or how did that?
To be honest, the big picture of the game, it's kind of opposite what they do now, I suppose. But it wasn't really, I didn't have a big plan in my head. It was more of, okay, I've got these blobs are going to interact with these blobs, and you'll need to get out of the way here and drop down into these spaces. It was just working out game mechanics, and then you built a bit of a story and a theme around those game mechanics. Probably nowadays they think up a big movie style backstory and all that kind of thing, but really I just bolt the story on the end. Really, it was just more about how shapes interacted and how it felt to play.
Mm-hmm. So when did you move across? What was your last 8-bit game?
So after License to Kill, there was Solomon's Key, and then there was a game for Vivid Image called Time Machine, which was the first game I did for Vivid Image and my last Spectrum game. And that involved, it was kind of like a time travel paradox thing where you'd go to an earlier time zone, which would affect things in a later time zone. A bit like, it was like based on Back to the Future, that kind of vibe that it had. Nice little game. I didn't design that game, actually. It was someone at Vivid Image who designed it. But it was my last Spectrum game.
Yeah. So how did you find were you still with Houston at the time when you kind of moved on to 16-bit?
No, I'd already left Houston to do my first game for Vivid Image, which was 8-bit Time Machine. But then after that, it was First Samurai, which was Commodore Amiga.
Yeah, but it was, in fact, well, I've got a wee picture of it here. That was, what was it? I'm trying to think. I was thinking it was System 3, but they were nothing to do with that. Well, they did, obviously. They did The Last Samurai. You did the first one.
No, they did Last Ninja.
Last Ninja, yeah.
And there were a couple of guys from System 3, Mev Dink and John Twiddy. They left System 3 and they started Vivid Image. That's why they called, there was Last Ninja, so they said, okay, let's call our game First Samurai.
Mev Dink.
Yeah.
Was Mev Dink, did he installed it? So I'm looking, I've got Dell Command Update, bugger off. Did he start Vivid Image then?
Yeah, he started Vivid Image with a guy called John Twiddy, who was also and someone called Hugh Riley, who was more of an artist.
That's right. He did a lot of stuff in the C64, and I think John Twiddy, did he not do Tau Ceti? I think it was.
Yeah, but he did quite a bit. John, it's a good program.
Yeah, I just name dropping there. Right? All these guys are like, wow. So I mean, the first Samurai. I get my words right. It was quite an eye-opening, beautiful looking Amiga game. So did you do all the coding for that one then? Or?
Yeah, I did all the coding. I did not do the graphics. They had the guy, I can't remember his full name now, but his nickname was Doc, and he did that animated character, with the kind of speed blur on the sword and that kind of thing, which was amazing. But he wasn't there for very long. He did some concept work, the character, and a little bit of background stuff, and that was it. He left, so it got handed over to another artist. I think it was a guy called Teoman Ermak. He lived in Birmingham, and I think he took over doing the graphics. Although I designed the level layouts, I designed all the levels, and we just filled them with graphics basically.
Yeah. It was a real showstopper. I mean, it's and the sound as well. I mean, it made good use of like the sampled sound, like hallelujah.
Yeah, that was, to be honest, I'd started off. I'd done like a kind of orchestral stab, if you remember, when you hit the opponent, you get this nice kind of orchestral stab. And I thought that works quite well. So I was just messing around, and I put that hallelujah chorus in there. when you open one of the treasure chests up, and I think it's just a joke. I'll take it out. But Mev loved it, so we just left it in. That was before we worried about copyright, just sample straight from a CD.
That would be, you wouldn't get away with that nowadays, would you? Yeah, I mean, even at the start when you get this sort of like the spin, it goes woo, woo, really kind of atmospheric.
Well, that was actually, that Queen album, Flash Gordon. It was actually sampled from that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, from the Flash Gordon film soundtrack.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And it's got one. I actually played this not that long ago. It's got one of the finest like opening intros with the music.
Oh, the music. Yeah, I think the guy was only 16 that did that music.
Was it your own tell? Was it? I can't remember who did.
No, it wasn't. It was someone else. It's on YouTube. The music. It was great. Yeah, it was a fantastic track, and it had that kind of constant sword sharpening sound through it on a beat. It was really, really good.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. And you had like the sort of silhouette with the guy and the master, and it was just really beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, and then you did, obviously it must have been pretty popular. You did the second one, the Second Samurai, funnily enough.
Yeah, we did Second Samurai, which we also did that on the Sega Mega Drive as well. It was quite a different game actually on the Sega Mega, far more arcadey. And loads. I mean, the number of bosses. I was watching a video of it the other day, actually on YouTube, of kind of playthrough. The amount of work I put into that thing was just nuts. There was just so many bosses and all sorts of crazy. You could jump onto dinosaurs and ride them, and all sorts of crazy stuff going on.
So was this the second one that came out in the Mega Drive?
Yeah, that was Sega Mega Drive. Yeah.
So what is the you want to play? If you're going to play it, what one would you recommend?
Well, I mean, First Samurai, I guess it's the original one, but it was much slower paced than the Mega Drive one. The Mega Drive one's really very arcadey, very fast. But yeah, I mean, probably First Samurai, really.
Yeah. Fantastic. And then, so was it just the three? Was it the 3 games you did for, or 2 games you did for Vivid?
I was involved in another game. I helped design it, which was Street Racer.
Oh, that's the one I was going to share. That was the SNES. I remember buying that for my SNES.
Yeah, and so that was actually a couple of guys that programmed that game. Chris and Tony West, who were identical twin brothers, and they flipped a coin as to who would do the programming and who would do the graphics. And it was, I remember when this was demoed at some event thing, Nintendo were there, and they were really interested in how we managed to get 4-player split screen going with no.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
There was no additional hardware in the cartridge or anything that they were doing. It was just just really well programmed. So they were quite impressed with that. And it was obviously a Mario Kart kind of clone.
I had Mario Kart, but me and my mates used to play this one more. It was just Mario Kart was too kind of babyish for me, although it is a fantastic game. But this was, that was something else. I mean, it was just, I'm getting all misty-eyed and nostalgic just looking at that screenshot. Let you fire it up. Obviously, you've got a Street Fighter 2 sumo wrestler down there as well, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and there was a couple of the Suzuki brothers, and there was a character called Raffaele in it, who's kind of Italian with dark sunglasses, I remember as well.
Was that anybody that you knew at all?
Yeah.
So I'm just looking down here. I've got bad light. I've got always a few things. So, how did you get on with like Andrew Hewson and Steve Turner and that? Were they a good bunch to?
Yeah, I probably met Steve Turner a couple of times. Not really. I didn't know him that well, to be honest, because I was working at home, so I wouldn't really see too many other people. But I'd occasionally go to the Hewson offices. Yeah, I got on fine with Andrew Hewson. He just generally just let you get on with the game, and they would do their bit with the PR and marketing and everything. They're a nice bunch at Hewson. They knew their stuff, and like I said, they had a very good stable of games. So I don't know why they went bust or whatever happened to them, but yeah, that was that. A nice company to work for.
Yeah. Again, I've interviewed. What was it? Play Blackpool. I was fortunate enough to do the talks, and I had it was Andrew. I think it was his son. I can't remember. There was somebody else. I can't remember who it was. But lovely guy. Really, really nice. So after Street Racer, I think that's when you kind of got into the 13-bit era, the PlayStation. Was it Agent Armstrong? And
yeah, so I left. I actually left Vivid Image and started a company with Chris and Tony West, who did Street Racer, and one other guy that was a Vivid Image who was a producer. So the four of us left, and we started a company called King of the Jungle, which was a great name. And I remember we had to get permission from Prince Charles's, at the time, Prince Charles's solicitor to be able to actually use the word king in a company name, which was quite interesting.
Really?
Yeah. And so we started this company, King of the Jungle. We did none of them were big hits, to be honest, but we grew to about 35 people until then we got bought out by a company called UDS, who were based in Sweden. They had the Futurama license, and they'd done some, I don't know, snowmobile games and things like that. They were kind of much bigger company, and they bought us out basically.
Yeah. So how did you find the transition from like 8-bit to 16-bit to then like 32-bit?
8-bit to 16-bit was almost more of the same. It was just much more colors, far better CPUs. Like the Amiga had the 68000 CPU, which was lovely CPU, really nice to program. And obviously on the Amiga, you had things like the Blitter, which was a bit of a hardware assistance and all the nice sampled sounds. So, but it was fundamentally still a 2D video games machine. So
yeah.
Very familiar in that respect. Going from 16-bit to 32-bit on the PS1 with all the 3D, that was completely, was really tricky, because all of a sudden, not only it's 32-bit, fair enough, but it's 3D. So all of a sudden, all your preconceived ideas about how you do artwork and design levels and things just goes out of the window. And it was tough. It was tough for everybody. It was a really big transition, 16 to 32-bit.
Yeah, I know who was it I spoke to? Yeah, it was Andy Walker, who was Task Set Software. And he said that, I don't know if you're familiar with it, they did like Super Pipeline and all these kind of stuff. They did stuff in the early days in the Commodore 64. And he said when the 16-bit came along and 3D came along, they couldn't compete. They were like, we need to just give up. We can't compete with this. And that was it. I mean, that's learning from scratch again, really, are you?
Yeah, you were learning from, and also the PlayStation was on the machines like the Amiga and the Spectrum. You just basically wrote everything from scratch. You didn't use what were called libraries and all the third-party libraries and all this kind of stuff. Whereas the PlayStation, all of a sudden, it had all these libraries, and you didn't program it in machine code anymore. You programmed it in a language called C or C++. It was really different. And you never programmed those old games in high-level languages like that because it was too slow. But all of a sudden, you had this machine that was capable enough that you could program in higher-level languages, and it was just exponentially more complicated. You needed more art, more sound, just everything. Yeah.
I suppose it's like anything. It's like, I don't know, the more resources you've got at your disposal, the more potentially exposed you can become. And so gone were the days of like the bedroom coder.
Yeah, and that was quite. So to me,
Yeah.
that's when the industry changed for me, because the kind of joy of doing a game by yourself had gone. Or
Yeah.
you're working with some great guys and talented people and everything, but that kind of bedroom coder feeling has gone. It's become a business. You've got to pay salaries and all that kind of thing, and deadlines, and it turned into a business rather than a kind of extension of your hobby.
I suppose again, when I remember, like Jeff Minter said that you went from creating games for your pals to play and for you to play, and it was fun, to suddenly the accountants moved in and it was about, well, that's never going to sell, and it just became serious.
Yeah, exactly. And you're worrying about your publisher, and you've got your offices to pay for and your salaries. It's all of a sudden the focus changes, which is a bit of a shame, but it's the way it is.
I suppose it's like any kind of industry. When it becomes popular, of course, it's going to become.
That said, though, now you have the indie game scene where you've had games like my daughter played with it, Undertale, and Thomas Was Alone, and all these are the games that are fairly simplistic, and it looks like something one or two people could do.
Yeah.
And they're very successful. So it's kind of gone full circle in some ways.
Well, I spoke to a fellow Scottish guy called, I think it's Alan, and I do apologise, Alice, I've got your second name, is Alistair Lowe, and he did, it's a game about like a flea and a tapeworm and that kind of stuff. He's an indie, and it's just, and I suppose now is a good time for people, like, if you want to make games, you can make low budget games and sell them. Whereas, probably 10 years ago, stuff it was all on the PlayStation 2 and what have you. You'd have to.
I mean, now you read about AAA titles that cost over $200 million and 300 people working on it. You think that's just balmy. I mean, how is that sustainable? Unless you're having hit after hit. But I guess the big hit games are just paying for all the failures, I guess, now.
Yeah. I suppose that's why you don't really get any real creativity anymore. I mean, when you think back to the games in the early days, I mean, what do you call them, like Microgen, Pajama Rama, Everyone's a Wally, Trash Man, where the game is to empty bins. I mean, you just wouldn't get a game like that nowadays, I don't think.
No, it all has to be these kind of epic. And to be honest, I'm not a big, these hyper realistic graphics that the games have got now. To me, they leave me cold when I see them now. It's just like watching a movie, and I guess a bit of the character's gone out of things. I guess not that I play games anymore, but from what I can see, you look at videos and things, it's all it's just massive big budget movie like productions now.
Yeah. So what was your favorite? I think I know the answer to this one. What would you say was your favorite kind of era for creating games? 8-bit, 16, or like?
Probably the ones that the era that I enjoyed the most would have been 8-bit, because it was still an extension of my hobby. And the joy I would get from looking at games and playing them and all that kind of thing. Then as we moved into 16-bit, it became more of a business, and finally on the PlayStation, it was literally just business, and the kind the joy had kind of gone out of it for me at that point.
Yeah, I can imagine not being a technical person at all. I can imagine, like, back in the day, if I had the skill to program a game, you were actually able to say that I'm going to do the graphics, I'm going to put a bit of programming and get it controlling. You could see it all coming together. Whereas nowadays, if you're like a 16-year-old wanting to get into the sort of games design industry, your job might be, I did the model for the chairs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's become that granular now that you'll have programs that all I do is special effects, or some of the special effects.
Yeah, you're never going to actually. Well, you're going to see the finished thing, but you're never going to. There's so many bits. There's something. I mean, I played. I don't play many games now, but one of my favorite games is like the Last of Us series, and I recently completed the second one, The Last of Us 2. It took me about 2 years to complete because I'm crap, and I can't be bored with that, and then I go back and play it. I get past it, but I completed it, and honestly, it was like 15 minutes of credits for just
thousands
and thousands of people.
Yeah, Yeah, and my games, the credit will say graphics, Raf Cecco, programming, Raf Cecco, game design, Raf Cecco, and maybe one person for the music, and that was
it. And you'd maybe thank your girlfriend for making cups of tea on your program or something.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah, when I messaged you to ask if you fancy doing this, you just said that it always amazes you how fondly people still remember what you did, which was effectively what 30, 35, 40 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, that's a long time. Yeah.
So have you kind of not been involved in the sort of like the whole nostalgia thing for a long time?
No, like I said, I left the games industry in about 2003, that sort of time, around the time I joined Form. I took like a year out and just got involved in web technologies and tech and all that kind of. That's what I've been doing since then, basically. But over the last month or so, maybe 2 months, I've just been paying a bit more attention to the retro scene, and I went to the Crash event.
Oh, did you go to that? Oh,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, and it was just people coming up and saying, "Oh, Raf," I think, "Oh, do I know this guy?" No, I don't know him, but they know me from the games, and just asking me to sign things, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I saw I recently picked up. I bought it. The Spectrum, which is like a recreated ZX Spectrum. It's like 90 quid. It's absolutely fantastic. It's great, for. And I've completely forgot my train of thought where I was going to go with that. Can't remember. Anyway, listen, I'm just conscious of time, Raf. This is called the Nice and Nasty Podcast for a reason. Have you done your homework and picked?
I've got my notepad here, actually.
Fantastic. So, lots of what I'm going to now ask you to do is to set the scene. The easiest way is, you're getting you're getting put on a desert island. It's only you on the island. You're allowed to pick 3 games that you can play. You've got internet, so if it's an online game, there's other people on other islands that you can play. It could be anything: arcade games, Spectrum, Commodore 64, PS5, whatever. So if you would like to just give me game number 1 that you would take to the island and just explain why you would take that one.
Well, the first one was quite easy, to be honest, and that was Defender. Because when that game came out, was it 1981 or something, with all the speed of it, the amazing sounds, which I think are just great even now, to be honest. I absolutely love that game. I was crap at playing it, but I just thought it was fantastic. It was really addictive. And just the way they thought about the sounds and the graphics, it was, for me, it was the perfect shooter. And I think even now it holds up really well. You'd be hard pushed to find a kind of more hardcore shooter than Defender. I loved Phoenix as well, that you've got there in the middle. This just pipped it at the post, I think, Defender.
Well, I don't know if you can. My camera's crap. It's a work thing. That's actually, it's not an original, but that's actually a Defender card.
Yeah, well, that's why I thought it was Defender earlier. Yeah, I could see.
Yeah, it's got I actually bought that off a guy, a Geordie called Paul Spriggs. Paul was, I think he did hold the world record for Defender. Cracking guy. So I actually went down to Newcastle to buy that off him. It's got MAME on it, so I can play other stuff. But I got one of my mates to interview me for the Nice and Nasty a couple of weeks ago, and one of my games that I would take is Defender. And for me, the reason is because it is the game. And what I tried to explain was, and you mentioned it earlier on, like modern games, you would never ever. I know people that have played, like, I don't know, whatever it is, these modern games, and they've completed it 4 or 5 times, and like it's taken 100 hours and 200 hours. I say you would never ever go into the pub or go to work and go, oh, by the way, I completed Call of Duty Battlefield. People would be like, who cares? No, I'm not interested. Says if you put 2 million on Defender, you would be bragging about it, and people would be like, oh my god, I know this guy that put 2 million on Defender. Actually, a guy was in here sanding my kitchen worktops, And when he saw that, he went, oh my God, defender off the play. And I fired, the worst thing I'd done was I put it on for him. And in between working, he was playing that. And the bugger has only gone and put like 50,000 on the high score. Oh, I can't get anywhere near it.
Well, do you remember the big thing was when you clocked the score? Do you remember when it would go all nines and then?
No, I couldn't. I'd never get to that. Did you manage to clock it?
No, I didn't, but I saw people that would do that. Yeah,
yeah.
Defender, which was damn hard. I mean, I was terrible at it, but I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, it is the most difficult video game ever. But when I was growing up in central Scotland. I didn't really. There was no arcades nearby. The only time I ever got to play an arcade game would be when I went to like my judo lessons in the sports centre. They would have like an arcade cabinet. It was Space Invaders, and then I think they got Track and Field at one point. And you would maybe have like one shot, and that was it. And on the very, very, very odd occasion when we went, my mum and dad would take us camp. We used to go down, I don't know why, we used to travel down the A1 down to Essex to a place called Roydon, and we would camp, and that was our annual holiday. And when we're going down, we'd go to like the service station for like a piss, and my mum would give me 10 pence, and I could have like one shot of one of the arcade games. And I'd put on Defender, it was like, boom, 25 seconds, game over. And so I never went anywhere near it. And then obviously with the advent of things like Play, Blackpool and Revival, and there's I don't know if you're aware of an arcade club. It's in Bury. It's a guy called Andy Day. It's his own personal collection, and he must have 500 cabinets. He's got every single cabinet you could ever think. 16 quid gets you an entry, and it's free games all day. And I looked at it and I thought, I'm not playing that, it's far too hard. But when I bought that, I can now pilot the ship. I can now go, reverse and all that kind of stuff. I'm still shit at it, but I can now, and it's the most you get a genuine feeling of satisfaction that I can now control the vendor.
Yeah, and it's how satisfying it is just to shoot one of the aliens. Just the way the sound works and the little, those little particles that come out. It's just really satisfying to play. Yeah.
We could talk all night about Defender. I'm not going to ask you why you would take that one to your desert island, but presumably it's because you will never own Defender. It owns you.
Yeah, exactly. I might get good at it if I had enough time to practice on the desert island. That's for sure.
What is your high score in it? Can you remember?
Oh no, I can't remember. Not very much, I don't think. But
I think I once got to level 4, but probably 20,000 or something. It's balls hard. Game, an absolute stonewall. It's the best video game, bar none. Game number 2.
Oh, this was tricky. I wish you'd give me like 6 games I could take. It's been really tricky to work these ones out, to be honest. It was going to be a toss-up between Super Mario World on the SNES and Mario Kart. I'll go for Super Mario World because I played that game to death. Mario Kart I played to death as well, but it was with my brother or my daughter, who modern on the Switch. But I've got another multiplayer game, so I'll go for number 2. Super Mario World, because I just thought that was a brilliantly designed game. I love Nintendo graphics, and I just thought that was such a lovely, really well designed game. Super Mario World on the SNES.
Yeah, I think if I'm right in thinking it was like the game that they packaged with the
they did, and it showed off some of the fancy abilities like the Mode 7 graphics and things like that. It was great. 97 levels, I remember, which was kind of crazy back then. Was really unheard of, wasn't it?
So did you manage to complete it then?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did manage to complete. I probably read a couple of magazines for cheats and things, how to finish certain levels. I did finish it. Yeah.
And I suppose, unlike all your games that you programmed, I mean, you did have save states. Well, it wasn't save states. Well, it was a save state, but you had, or save points.
Yeah, you had them.
You weren't up to complete it in a single sitting. Yeah.
And I really like the concept of when you play the later level, you could fill in blocks that were missing in the earlier levels when you found one of the switch palaces, if you remember. That's a really nice, well thought out kind of way of extending the level, so you want to go back and see the areas that you couldn't access earlier. It was really nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of like I don't know, arsonists in the kind of like the people talk about, like, you know, all these hardcore PC gamers and all that. You know, you mention like Nintendo. Oh, they're just for girls. You know what I mean? But I would always say that out of any other company, Nintendo, when they do put out a game that they've written, it has been like play tested and shined and polished.
Yeah,
it's almost like perfection. It really is.
Yeah, it's just the way the way they position the platform, so it's just enough to complete, get across the jump or whatever. But it's really easy to mess up, and just there's a bit of a story going through the game as well, and the kind of little bosses and things that they have. Yeah, it's just lovely, really nice to play games, very addictive.
Yeah. So how long would it take? I mean, if you were to play it from start to finish, how long would it physically take? If you were like really good at games, could you complete it in a couple of hours?
I can't remember. I haven't played that for years, that game.
Yeah.
It's one that sticks out as, I remember playing that a hell of a lot. I couldn't tell you how long it took. A long time.
Yeah. And I think there was also you could play two players. Was it? I think you swapped. I think you could actually. I think you took one turn each. I think
they always had that kind of weird thing of the score as well. I think they had to score in it, but you never really paid attention to that aspect of it, did you? Really, you just wanted to finish the levels regardless of the score, I think.
So why would you take that game? I mean, bear in mind you're on your desert island, you've got Defender, you've got your arcade fix. Why would you take that game?
It's a nice bit of nostalgia. It makes me smile, and I also love the music as well. Although those kind of little jazzy numbers that were in there, it's just something to really relax with. That type of game.
Yeah,
nice. Yeah,
nothing wrong with that. Okay, last game number 3.
Right. Okay. So I mentioned Mario Kart, but I did like that game as well, but mostly because I played it with other people. But Street Fighter. So I played that to death.
2. Presumably you're talking about the second one.
Is the one that came out on the SNES with that Street Fighter?
Oh, yeah, the 2. The first one is dog shit, yeah.
I played that to death with my brother. And I mean, we actually end up physically fighting when he was. It was that bad, yeah. And later on, I played later versions of Street Fighter with my daughter as well. It was the same thing. I wanted to wring each other's necks when we were playing it. So I've got a lot of good memories playing Street Fighter. So I'd bring that as well. It might be difficult to find someone to play it with me, but you never know. You might find something on the desert island.
I'll give you the Man Friday appears at one point. Exactly. He's actually pretty good at Street Fighter. Too. Yeah, I mean, I do remember. It's interesting how I couldn't tell you what I had for my dinner tonight, and yet I can still certain games that I bought, I can remember where I was and where I bought them, and I can still remember sitting. I think I must have dropped my girlfriend off or something. I don't know. And I was in a car park in Edinburgh, and I'd bought computer video games, and I read a review of Street Fighter 2, and I mean at that point I think I had an Amiga. And I'm like, I would love to get that, but I couldn't afford like a £200 SNES. But it was probably one of the arcade perfect games. I mean, really,
on the SNES, it was a fantastic coin-op conversion. It was really, really good. Just great. I'm not really that into beat 'em ups, to be honest. I never really liked Mortal Kombat or any of the others, but Street Fighter, there was something about it that was just right. Really nicely balanced gameplay and great characters.
It's like a purist game. I mean, I'm rubbish at it. And so, you can sort of you play like Tekken. You can just go, you can mash buttons. You can complete it with just doing nothing. I have a friend, Andrew Lowe. He grew up down in London. He is easily the best video game player I've ever met, and I would bet it can beat anybody. He's one of these guys, and he ended up he worked on what was the name of the SNES magazine. SNES, I can't remember what it's called. Was it Total or something? I can't remember. But he was the editor of Games Master magazine. He's always been. He's now an author, and he was a editor of Total Film. He got to hang out with Keira Knightley. He spent 3 or 4 days with Tom Cruise, and he left. And I said, "When did you die?" He goes, I just got bored of it. He couldn't be bored, so he's now an author. But he, when he was working for one of the gaming magazines, Virtua Tennis had just been released on the Dreamcast, and they had this party for Virtua Tennis. Nobody had played it at all apart from the Dreamcast guys. So Andy and a few of the other guys got invited along, and they had a tournament, and Andy won it, and he never dropped a single point, and he'd never played the game in his life.
Really? Wow.
I'm actually meeting him next year. We're going to go down to an arcade club and play some games. And what he was saying to me was, I said, how is it? Why are you so good? Because it's not even like, if you play a game often enough, you're going to get good at it. You could put a game that he's never played before, and within a couple of minutes, he'll be like,
yeah.
What he said to me was, when I met him down I was down south, we were having our breakfast in the travel lodge. We're sitting talking, and I asked him that question. He says, "There's 2 girls sitting over in the corner." I went, yeah. He goes, "I can hear what they are saying, and I can also hear that guy over there. He's talking about his car's broken down, and I can hear the guy there." He says, "I've got this ability to sort of like a helicopter. I've got this overview of everything that's going on all at once." He says it's almost like for me, like ADHD, whatever you want to call it.
Wow.
But a kind of spider sense. And he says he can apply that to video games. So he's able to almost see things that you and I just don't see.
Yeah.
Gives them this advantage. But even things like you play him at FIFA, he'll beat you 10-0. It's just.
I can't play. I mean, my reaction times are measured in whole seconds now. We're playing Mario Kart on the Switch with my daughter. She's 20, but she just absolutely thrashes me.
I bought. We've got my daughter's. Well, she just turned 21 last week, actually. But she's a video gamer as well, funnily enough. And we've got Mario Kart 8. Well, we played it on the Wii U, and then we've got it for the Switch. And she just hands me my arse on a plate. I can't. And there's times that I'll play. What was I playing recently? I was playing a remake of Resident Evil 4 on the Xbox, and I got to this bit, and I just could not get past this thing. I says, "Ava, can you come down?" And she's like, "There you go, Dad. Right, save. Right. You want a cup of tea?" And she just completed it for me, and I saved it.
Yeah.
But anyway, Andy, I remember being down in it was a place called Retrocade, which was a private collection of video games. It was away down Oxford or something, hundreds of miles away from me. And you went along, you paid your 10 quid, and we got in. And I remember watching Andy and this other guy playing Street Fighter 2, and you couldn't even get a single point off him. He's just he's like block, punch, parry, special move, double, just combos. And there's a video on YouTube. I mean, they still play. They still is it Street Fighter 6? I think it is now. Although it's turned into 3D graphics, it's still really reactive, and it still is. It's still what's pure. It's as pure as the originals.
It's 3D graphics, but the gameplay is still 2D.
Yes, it's 2D.
That's why it's good, because they
you play the latest FIFA game, whatever it is, which is a pile of crap. But anyway, you play that, and you press a button to do a tackle, and it will go into an animation where he goes and does a tackle. In that thing, you press block, boom, he'll just block. It's instant. And so in Japan, in Japan, they still have Street Fighter 6. There's competitive professional players that play this. But there's a video from it. It was quite an old one now. They were playing Street Fighter 2, and what's her name? What's the girl that does the kick, spinning kick? What's her name again? Chun-Li.
Yeah.
Chun-Li.
Yeah.
She's fighting, I don't know who it is, we'll say Ken. And Ken is beating her, and she's got a tiny wee bit of energy. And then Ken launches this multiple combo attack, and she goes block, 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 counter attack, and she beats him. And this was getting filmed in a competition, and there's like 10,000 people watching it. And when she wins, I'm like, yeah! And it's like, wow, it was this incredible atmosphere. And then they showed you in slow motion, and Ken's going like that, boom, and she's like block, 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 and it's incredible reactions. So I just go, I button mash. There's no skill involved. It's pure luck. But when you get somebody who is that good, it's an art. It's a form of art. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it's like a kind of ballet, isn't it? Trying to all those movements. Yeah,
proper skill. So anyway, you've picked 3 fantastic games. Yeah, awesome. Right, anyway, I need to turn the tone down slightly now. We're now getting into it. It's going to turn a wee bit dark. Quite literally. I'm going to ask you to pick 3 games. Well, I did ask you to pick them. You're going to review them one at a time. 3 games that, for whatever reason, if you could just remove them from history, it could be a game that you hate, a game that was just rubbish, or it could be a game. I've had people pick Doom because Doom led on to the multiplayer, which they detest. So I'm going to ask you to name one at a time, and tell me why you have eradicated this game.
Yeah, I'm going to start a bit of trouble now. Wipeout. And the reason is because that game was too bloody slick. It was too cool for school. It was because we were still making games that had a bit of an amateurish look to them and things like that. That you'd look at things like that's sort of a bit ropey. Whereas this came out, it was so slick. Everything looked perfect. The perfect graphic, the fonts, the logo, the music. You had Prodigy and Chemical Brothers, and it was just with a small games development company thinking, how the hell are we going to compete with that? It was it was incredible. It shouldn't really be on a bad list, really, but at the time it made you think, God, how do we compete? It was I wish it hadn't come out at the time. We would have been not so discouraged, possibly. Yeah.
Oh, you're the first. I mean, I've had a few people who develop games, but you're the first person who developed games that come up with a reason that it actually impacted on your career to a point.
Yeah, it just set this bar for this incredibly slick presentation. Everything's cool and it's not cutesy anymore, and everything. They also have these special fonts designed, and it was quite annoying. I wish I'd worked on it, but
I mean, as a consumer, I remember seeing it and thinking, "Holy shit, this is."
Yeah.
And as you say, it had all the music, the Chemical Brothers. I mean, from what I believe, there was like, they were they called discos, they were called nightclubs or raves, whatever. There was these companies were putting like PlayStation 1s into these clubs, and it probably brought on a generation of people who would never. There's probably a lot of people that played Wipeout that probably never played video games up till that point, and they've probably never played since they stopped taking drugs and what have you. They've probably never played video games again.
Yeah, because it was prior to that, it was all quite nerdy and cartoony games and all that kind of thing. When this thing comes out, it was almost like a kind of cultural phenomenon, wasn't it? Really? Yeah.
Brilliant. That is a brilliant reason for getting rid of it. So I mean, in a slightly lesser sense, although they had the wherewithal to think about it, when Ultimate had programmed Night Lore before. No, not Night Lore. They'd programmed Night Lore before.
Yeah.
World, and they realised that it was too far ahead of its time.
Yeah, see, they had the Stamper Brothers, wasn't it? Because they already had a background in proper coin ops, didn't they? Some kind of relationship.
That's right. Yeah, they did.
So they were already ahead of the game, weren't they? Because they had that extra bit of knowledge. But their games are fine. They didn't annoy me so much as Wipeout. Wipeout was just like, Yeah, it was just too cool for school, and it was very, very slick, and set the bar too high for others.
That's a fantastic first choice. Right, game number 2 that should be eradicated from history.
Well, that'll be a game that my company made, actually, called Groove Rider Slot Car Thunder, and that was developed under a shadow of kind of financial problems, and the joy had been sucked out of games development completely for me. We released this kind of half-baked game which didn't really sell well at all and got pretty poor reviews, and it was just quite a depressing period of time, really. So I've put that in there. It's called,
what was it called? Groove Rider
Slot Car Thunder. It was kind of a Scalextric type thing on the
Slot Car Fun.
Thunder Slot Car.
Oh, Thunder Slot Car Thunder. That's quite a name. What was that? I'm assuming that was on like the PlayStation or something, was it?
Yeah, that was a PS2, I think.
Oh, was it? Yeah. There was a lot of shovelware that came out in these machines back then.
Yeah,
so
this was shovelware. Yeah, it was. It was a lot of work. It wasn't the work that you put into shovelware, because it was a lot of work, but it was just it wasn't made with the right attitude. It was a way of, well, we need to pay the wages and we need to get this game out. There was no joy or enjoyment in there at all.
It must have been quite difficult to actually try and motivate yourself to like be working on a game that this is going to be shit. You're like going through the motions almost, were you?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't programming that game, actually. I was working on something else. I can't remember what it was at the time, but we had some other guys working on this at the company, and it just wasn't turning out right. And like I said, there was this shadow of gloom over King of the Jungle at the time, and it was not great memories for that game. And
was that one of the last games that you worked on then, really? Was
it? Yeah, pretty much. I think that was the last game I was ever involved with, actually. Yeah.
And do you think, had you decided prior to making that game that you were going to hand your membership card in, or?
Yeah, around the kind of the year before that came out, pretty much I thought, you know what, I've actually had enough of this now, and waiting. And so what happened is at the time the King of the Jungle went down, but we'd already been bought by UDS, so I had a bunch of UDS shares and some redundancy money, and I thought, okay, I'm going to just take a year off, basically, because I got involved in tech and boring stuff like that, really.
And you never really went back. So that was kind of like the swan song, but well, no.
Yeah, it was a very sad one as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
Really good game.
See, if only you'd retired after Cybernoid, then you wouldn't be here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I should have just retired after Cybernoid. That would have been fun. Maybe for a Samurai.
Yeah, again, I can totally get it. So it's a game that you worked on that you would never recommend anybody to play.
No, well, unless it was for morbid curiosity, no, I wouldn't play it. No.
Yeah, and you said it didn't sell particularly well as well. I mean,
no, it didn't. I think it ended up going with Play It. One of those budget.
Oh yeah, kind of budgety things.
Yeah.
Game. Yeah, I think that certainly deserves a list on the stairwell of shame.
Yeah.
Last one there, Raf. What's that going to be?
Oh God, Flappy Bird. When that came out, I thought the world has gone mad. That's the sort of thing we'll do in a weekend, just for showing kids how to program a game. And all of a sudden, it just goes viral, and you just think that's ridiculous. I didn't know what was going on there, but I thought that was nuts. Congrats to the guy that made the game. I'm sure he made a lot of money out of it, but it just struck me as a bizarre thing to become viral, really. Yeah.
I mean, the guy apparently hated it so much that he ended up like deleting it, and he just like.
Yeah, well, it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I mean, I presume you've played it.
I mean, I remember. I think I think I had an iPhone at the time. I don't buy them now, but I think it was an iPhone, and I downloaded it, and then it disappeared off the App Store, and then you had all these chancers selling like an iPhone 3G. With Flappy Bird, and it was like 800 quid because you couldn't get it anymore, and they were selling it with Flappy Bird installed.
Yeah, well, you could program it yourself. It was 800 quid, just to get yourself a laptop and program it yourself.
So yeah, what is there anything in particular about that game that you think?
Well, there was nothing wrong with it, really. It was fine as a silly little game, but I just couldn't understand. It was like people that had never played a video game before and just suddenly encountered this thing. And I don't know why people were getting addicted to it. He just hopped around and just went through the gaps. So, and the pipes were just ripped straight out of Mario as well.
That's right.
Those
Yeah,
green
yeah. I mean, I
So,
suppose you could say it was a work of genius. You know, if you had
yeah,
1 pence for every copy that was downloaded, you'd probably be a millionaire.
yeah, exactly. It's just, I mean, obviously, I wish I'd done it, of course, because it was like it was taking me a weekend to do. But yeah, I didn't, and so someone else. But I just didn't understand why it got so viral.
Yeah. Again, I think as well. I mean, I am not. What saddens me when I'm talking to a lot of people like yourselves, and you say, "So what are you doing now?" Then, I work on like Sean Southern, who did like Lotus Turbo Challenge, and he did like Kickstart and all these. He works on like mobile games, and I'm like, oh, that's just. I understand why he's doing that, because you're not going to get. There's no money to be made making a game for the Spectrum nowadays. But yeah, kind of purists like myself, you just think, oh, that's time to give it up.
Yeah, I mean, games like like Crossy Road, which was basically Frogger, but that had a certain charm to it. It was really nice graphics, and it was cute, and it was a slightly different perspective. I could understand why that was a mega hit, but Flappy Bird, no, I couldn't understand why.
And then, of course, you've got things like Candy Crush. People that have never played a video game in their life will sit and play it. It's, we're getting into the realms of like in-app purchases and all that kind of shit. But anyway, listen, again, I understand why that's on the list. So just to very quickly recap your 3 games you would take: Defender, Super Mario World, and
Street Fighter.
Street Fighter 2. Yeah, you need to be specific, because Street Fighter and Street Fighter 2 are. I'll give you a quick anecdote. Street Fighter, the original, me and my mate, we both had the Commodore Amigas. We couldn't afford the 40 quid for a game, so every month when we got paid, we'd decide between us, right, we'll buy this game. We would both put in 20 quid, and he would get to keep the game. And then the next month it would be my game to keep. So we went into Virgin in Edinburgh, and we decided we're going to buy Street Fighter. And we got it home, and it was my game that I was going to keep. We got it. No, I tell a lie. It was his game, actually. He was going to get to keep it. We got home. I said to him, you put the kettle on, make a cup of tea for us. I'll load the game up. By the time he came through, I'd completed the game. And that is absolute dog shit. There you go. That's your game.
Yeah. Wow.
But even arcade Street Fighter, I've never seen such a massive jump between an original game being absolute dog shit to a game that people still play 40 years on.
Yeah, that's incredible. To be honest, I never really looked at the original Street Fighter. It was like Street Fighter, but yeah, Street Fighter.
It actually had pads, so you punch the pads.
Oh, okay, yeah, that sounds.
Yeah, so it was more about the gimmick rather than the actual game.
Yeah, okay.
So listen, Raf, that is it. It's been an absolute privilege to have you on. It really has, and I mean that sincerely. You're always welcome to any time you want to just come on and talk bollocks. If I do another 12-hour live stream, maybe next year, because people are always on me to do it, you'll be the first name in the book.
Yeah, just let me know.
That would be fantastic. And before I let you go, ZX Spectrum or Commodore 64?
Well, I didn't have anything against the Commodore 64 because I wasn't getting paid to work on it. So I was Spectrum, and I used to hand over my conversions to Nick Jones to do the C64. I'll have to say Spectrum, but don't take it personally.
Yeah, to be fair, I was actually surprised that you took as long to actually say Spectrum. But yeah, if everybody had made, and again, not being a Spectrum person, the games that you have put together, I've heard like that says the word legend, and I'm not going to name names that have been used with other people on the Spectrum. And then you look at your catalogue. I'd be struggling to think of anybody. Maybe Joffa Smith, the late great Joffa Smith. He did some fantastic games. You're absolutely up there as putting out some of the best looking and playable games for the Spectrum. And I just want to thank you for doing that and letting me talk bollocks 40 years on, and we still got a lot of pleasure out of playing your games. So I'm going to let you go, Raf. So again, finally, thank you very much for taking time to join me. And finally, folks, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
See you soon, man. Bye.